My proposal for this conference here, it examines soil as active agent of building and unbuilding landscapes and potentials of repairing and corroding changing opportunities. For whom is this old like, and also the new feminist question about it. So soiling takes place in collaboration. Human and non-human actors work together and produce effects together. Worms, roots, rodents, fungi, and sometimes even humans are capable of changing materials, consistencies, and with that, opportunities and agencies. Through their work, they create new opportunities and close others. Taking the example of the compost, a soiling practice in favor of human productivity and nurture is a collaboration of the human who moves material and many smaller actors who work on the material changes, like changing the temperature, corroding things, and decreasing the density of structures. Worms, rodents, fungi do their work in whatever is under the process of becoming soil. Even roots of new lives can permeate the former stable and firm material. So, and also like, I would like to think a bit like with Donna Haraway, who has been quoted like already today. So we require each other in unexpected collaboration and combinations in hot compost piles. We become with each other or not at all. That kind of material semiotics is always situated someplace and not no place, entangled and worldly. Right, staying with the trouble, making composting the threat, the general threat of the living in destroyed environments. So this way, actually, I want to show these allied, predominantly non-human actors and their collaborations of building and unbuilding of environments, conflicts, and material worlds. This way, I want to show these allied, predominantly non-human actors and their collaborations of building and unbuilding of environments, conflicts, and material worlds of commodification in two different categorizations I've been working with, or even colonizations of environments. Areas of extraction and areas of preservation may be quite the same, but both being exceptions of growing crops for nurture. However, I will use this six situated examples, landscapes and architectures, to show collaborative soiling activities. Situated example number 1, the open bit unsoiled. In mining areas, soil acts to level the ground after human agencies of exploitation have mobilized it to commodify the stone underneath. Plants produce new stabilities for human and non-human creatures to reinhabit the ground. However, not always stabilities can be recreated, and instead catastrophic events can happen when soil becomes unstable, and sometimes it's like not so easy to undo this, or it needs a long time. So this is like Malmberget, the community I've been working with since 2016. Malmberget means mountain of ore. And also like inspired by the fantastic talk of Roy, I want to also like give account of myself. So like what makes me coming to this kind of site. And there's actually two explanations for that. I was granted this postdoc fellowship in Sweden, and it was my first really good research salary, and I wanted to see like where the money is coming from in a way, like a first state money. And then I think there is also like an entanglement that we all architects share, because this place is looking as it is because it produces this material we build with, like not only there but worldwide actually. So this is Malmberget, a disappearing town in northern Sweden, about 100 kilometers north after the passage of the polar circle. It has a long mining tradition in the midst of an even older indigenous nature culture. So colonization led to informal mining, which was later taken over by companies and then by the Swedish state. In the golden era of the town, which was like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the state company LKAB invested in the culture and created local welfare, unprecedented in the Arctic region. Technical progress and also the demand of ore accelerated these mining processes. And due to an unexpected landslide in the 70s, so that's what it has been like looking in the 50s. And then also like when people discovered, okay, this hole is growing and we can't stop it, so the community is going to disappear. And that is what happened in the 70s, actually, that like an underground chamber collapsed. And is now like I'm borrowing this photo from Gabriela Olshammer, because it's like all these attempts to refill the hole and make the ground thus stable again for the environments failed, because it was not even possible anymore to come close to the edges to refill the hole. So soon the mining company had to give up on refilling measurements of the big hole. The edges have not been stable anymore. So no soil to stabilize the ground, no soil to prevent steeps from crashing. So it's also this kind of like collaboration that is happening here. It's like between the capitalism, the state, colonization, and so on. Situated example number 2. Literally undermined houses of extracted landscapes. So the community wants a northern colony of the Swedish welfare state with remarkable architecture from well-known welfare state architects, Folke Hederus, Håkan Olberg, Esk Sundal, Olof Lundgren is going to disappear because the ground has become unstable. So also in the last years of maintenance has become rare. People are moving out. The mining company has a plan for resettling them, but this is actually already going on since the 50s. And this is such like a drilling machine that constructs these underground cavities that makes the ground also so unstable. So and here is all these kind of like underground ways, and this is not like small ways, but it's like really like a small city also with a restaurant 500 meters under the ground. So I would say like humans here almost act like worms, but the problem is that they don't leave the material they digest under the ground but bring it somewhere else, so which makes it all a little bit unstable. So facades are decaying, plants and fungi can be found within the cracks. Facades are soiling, especially the parts exposed to rain and wind. The community has enacted remarkable practices of urgent heritage to keep the memories of their home. So what is also like happening with the ecology in the town center? In the town center, like soil and plants take over, and at the margins, this is what happens. Some houses are like disconnected from their like carrying soil, and are just waiting there to be moved to other places. But this is also just a temporary moment, because afterwards they are like fenced off and are transformed into this kind of like huge industrial landscape that is again cracking. Situated example number 3, undermined soil. This is a very quick one. I'm just adding because of its currentness. So 2 weeks ago, a new hole emerged on the north side of Malmberget after an underground chamber just collapsed. It is located on the northern part where the manager's villas were built in the 50s and removed in the last decades. The traces of the snow still show the human activities there. Now it has become a no-go area, fenced off already for a while, but now really become dangerous. So the area is like becoming post-human, literally post-human. The mining area, but also like within these fenced off and dangerous areas, the animal stock, so to say, could like also recover and extend. For example, pilgrim falcons, like the steeps of the hole's wall for their nests, and behind the fen, without human extraction, also the stock of larger animals could recover. In this case, the post-human condition will contribute to the further exploitation of the ground, the commodification of the stone and its ore, a short glimpse of non-human situations. However, the houses lose their value. They are not habitable anymore due to the unstable ground and due to the lack of maintenance since quite a while. So this is an interesting example, I think, of how the commodification of the ground leads to the discommodification of the houses, and again leads to the prospering of non-humans. Saying this also like in I'm saying this also about the Swedish context, which is like far more neoliberalized than the Central European context. But and also in this way, it's directly related to the settler colonization, actually, because formerly this place has been colonized, and the indigenous population was evicted, so to say. But now it's also happening to Swedish citizens, and it's also happening within the borders of the EU. So I think that also makes the example quite interesting. Okay, so now also like some examples about soil in conflict. So when I mean conflict, it's mostly based on colonization, even settler colonization initially. And now an easier example, national parks. They're important for the preservation of the species, but the exception of areas often relies on conflictual histories, colonization, war. During my PhD, I worked with 3 different national parks, of which I want to bring 2 to the discussion here. National parks with memories of conflict show soil as actors of covering memories and transforming areas of conflict zones into these zones of life, where preservation of species and scientific laboratories, burying conflictual memories and making them accessible to non-human inhabitants takes place. Situated example number 4, the flooded, rotting lion house in a preservation area. One example lies in Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique. It is a park with a size of almost 4,000 square kilometers, and it is managed with the help of an US-American philanthropist together with the Mozambican government. It was created during the colonial times, lived through brutal civil wars, losing 90% of the animal stock, and Cyclone Idai this spring. So architectures housing tourists are still from the colonial time in different shapes. One of them already fascinated me when I was there in 2011 already, old bungalows from the colonial times, but destroyed by a flood and actually never really renovated. So then the lions took over, actually. So this is with the cyclone, actually, when a new layer of mud is coming through the houses. And to understand these ongoing practices, needed to work against the soiling of the house in humid areas. Even more, I want to quote Lynette Tinley, who described her and her family's life during the 60s for ecological research. So she describes this kind of the work against the soiling of the house. There was a lot of work to be done in the house, even though it was small. We waged a constant war against cockroaches so big and hungry that they would chew the plastic covering from electric wires and mold that would creep over shoes and books if cupboards were not aerated. Antonio would wash the clothes. Antonio is the helper, so to say, of the family. He would wash the clothes, and each article would have to be ironed because of a parasite fly which lays its eggs on damp clothes. If not killed by a hot iron, the larva of this fly burrows into human flesh, creating a large itchy swelling. And even in this kind of daily practices, the colonial condition is immersed. Situated example number 5, the former weapons cache, now hard to find. Another example from the same park is a former weapons cache of the resistant national guerrilla troops, actually, during the Civil War, but now also a parliamentary army, a party. Who traditionally found refuge in the wilderness of the national park. In the north of the park, where the military quarter was nearby, and Renamo, leader hit to sit out conflicts. So I visited one of the park ranger who was also living there, and he showed us the former like storage points of the weapons, which were now grown over by plants, and only the structure of the meadow under the trees showed these plants, not to be found without ecology, without this local knowledge that only he could provide. So I also like the process of soiling was again like smoothing the ground and making this really hard to find. How much time do I still have?
Well, 5 minutes max, or 5, 6.
Okay, then thank you. Then I'll try to be quick here. So another national park I have been like working with in 2014 was the Blitwitze Lakes National Park. A contested area since recorded human history, but also of course very much in the 90s. This decay has happened for economic reasons, this decay of these houses because the area could never recover from the wars in the 90s. So we're and also like very near to this place, the first armed conflicts actually occurred directly in the national park, which is interesting too, I think. So this is actually the fish restaurant. Okay, I go into these examples now very quickly to come to my kind of like preliminary conclusion. Maybe some of you have seen this place. This is the fish restaurant near Hotel Blitwitze Lakes in the national park, re-inhabited in 2014, built in the 50s by architect Havale. So it's also like very beautiful to see how the sun terrace is like transformed into some kind of meadows, how the plants are taking every place of this house, how they're like reviving this building actually. Next to it, there's like another restaurant, the Kodziak restaurant, the former Kodziak restaurant, and there is actually basically the same happening. And this is even like Tito's Villa in the woods of the national parks. That is also now becoming like even like where the floor now transformed into some kind of like soils where plants can grow inside. So from the ecology, I like what's happening here is the trees are growing in the houses, the roofs crash, big plants replace the furnitures even. So moist climate even accelerates this process. So although primarily the soiling of the buildings hinders touristic commodification, but still attracts these people and leads to this kind of like alternative adventurous tourism of looking at these buildings. So now I'd like to give like a very brief like attempt of theoretization of these perspectives on my narrations. Soiling as resistance. In her book Dirty Theory, Ellen Frishaw, and I brought it also here for the library, just came out, she brings forth the potential of resistance of soiling in many ways, speaking about soiling as pissing oneself, which is the most impressively for me, the most impressive example that she gives. She recalls the memory of the woman on the way to the gallows. She soils herself while screaming and kicking to reach that. In the following years, women were not sent to the gallows due to the demonstration of not bringing the preconditions for this ritual, juridical ritual, not deemed fit to be executed, is like what Ellen Fisher calls it. A rotting building is difficult to commodify, to live in, to heat, to store food in. Collaborative work of humans and non-humans, of floods, cyclones, cockroaches, and also on the small scale, rodents, roots, seeds, makes the buildings unusable. But on the other hand, it is also this combination which grows over conflictual histories, almost in a decolonizing manner, to make way for new opportunities, such as the lion standing on the roof of the former colonial buildings. A rotting building means also rotting history, rotting opportunities, but sometimes rotting bad opportunities to make way for other opportunities, for other actors and new practices. Asking whose collaborative practice is, of course, a feminist question as well. So in these cases, the work of the soil is one of reconstruction and repair, but also covering and hiding, and shows diverse characteristics of vivid materialities and complex non-human human relationships. These empirical findings demand for new understandings of material basics of human and non-human practices, an understanding in which the material conditions allow for agencies and practices such as the labor of soiling and making space in new agents and inhabitants. So this vibrant thinking, to say it with Samantha Frost, of materialities contributed to exploring how the forces of matter and the processes of organic life contribute to the play of power to provide elements or modes of resistance to it. So it leads to this kind of like practices of counteracting hegemonies of the male and of the human. So Rosie Bradotti describes in the post-human turn in feminist theory, based on the convergence of post-humanism with post-anthropocentrism, critiquing the universalist posture of the idea of man with capital M as the alleged measure of all things. So, and also like, if it's not like man with capital M, so what is it? What is it then? Gomez Paris. Macarena Gomez Paris, like, this action demands such collaborations of actors, some capable to speak for themselves, but some dependent on ways to think with them and live, and as architects, plan and build with them. So Macarena Gomez Paris has therefore considered submerged perspectives to express the collaborative act of decolonization. These submerged perspectives are anchored within the social ecologies that recognize and refute the monocultural imperative, as do I in my encounter with these other worlds. Submerged modes flurry in their activity, random, complex, and coordinated systems that are often eligible to those with state and financial power that assume simplicity where complexity actually dwells. Such theories like foster within an intersectional feminist approach, which asks how we, like, back at the very initial question of this conference, actually, like who is the we, are differently entangled in the labor of the soil. And yet, as Rosie Bradotti calls, we still need some kind of like collective assemblage, like a we, but also like to entail the overthrowing of negativity through the recasting of the oppositional to quarter. So this counteracts also hierarchies, but still takes into account the manager of the national park, the miner, and the fungi who often start the unbuilding processes. Buildings are capable of housing, colonization, the commodification, or also the lions and the cockroaches, as well as us researchers. So also like to quote Rosie Bradotti, the question is not extinction per se, and like it's also important to know that I'm like thinking very much also with this kind of like dark picture of species extinction, of like capitalist advancements and all this kind of like in this relationship actually, and also this kind of like capitalist advancement that is also coming like into this back into the borders of Europe. The question is not extinction per se. The question is what we are capable of becoming in this particular convergence with particular fractures, challenges with the pain and the acceleration of living through a massive mutation. And also like others like Susanna Milewska have warned that have like at the same time like called for this kind of like trust in potentials of the empowerment, subjectivity, recuperation, and agency of friendship and solidarity. But also like on the other hand, like try to make us wary and not be naive or romanticize this kind of like things that acts of reconciliation or reparative acts make us believe. So this is some like my last slide, and this is like my preliminary conclusion of like revisiting all these kind of like places of my last 10 years of research. When soiling takes away the option of commodification and Boris conflicts, how will it live on in the ecology of worms, rodents, etc., who digest histories? Which kind of labor are they doing? Reparative labor, labor of resistance, practices of unbuilding. Especially when humans are not involved, the soiling of architectures is a very slow labor, giving time to mourn, giving a precondition for heritage practices of collecting, documenting, contextualizing, and finally of growing crops.